You're listening to Adventures in Project Management with John Goad.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well today. Wanted to talk to you about coaching today. Now, I've spoken about my project management mentor, and essentially he had coached me. In addition, I think coaching is a part of the mentoring process. And so I wanted to kind of focus on my observations and my learning as I am able to coach some people. So here's I've got 5 points that I wanted to make kind of through the process, and then hope that that's helpful to you if you're seeking a coach, or if you're looking to begin coaching others. This is kind of very broad, very general, kind of my system so far. So I'll just dive right into it here. So the first step is kind of an introductory or fact-finding effort. And so, when I first started doing some of this, which wasn't that long ago, I really wanted to make certain that I was a good listener, that I could just listen and hear, what the person that I was, coaching, what they had to say, what was on their mind, what's their pain, what's their problem, because it's all about helping not only develop people, but help them with their problems and find solutions to their problems. And so that was kind of loose at first, but I thought, if I'm just a good listener, if I can become a good listener, I can kind of hear what they're saying, and then we can have a dialogue and kind of see where it goes. And so that's exactly what I did. And it was really interesting, because there was a period of time where, you kind of have to get to know, where are you at? What are you doing? Tell me about your company. Tell me about who you work for. Just general context of who you're talking to or who you're trying to help. And then after that, that can take a few weeks. If you're meeting weekly, it could happen as quickly as a couple of sessions. It really depends on the individual and how quickly they want to open up and start that dialogue. And so then you move on to, so that's step A, or number 1, is the kind of introductory and fact-finding phase. Step number 2 is identifying that pain or that problem, and specifically. And so a lot of times, what I found is that people won't necessarily have, they know they need coaching in an area maybe, or they just want to bounce some things off of somebody else, and which is fantastic, but they may not have a plan. They may not have it boiled down to the thing or the set of things, the list that that they want to attack. And that's great, because during this second step, the identifying the pain or the problem, we can kind of get into that. And even if they don't know, if they can't put a name to exactly what's wrong, I mean, most people can, but a lot of times, it'd be broad and it just seems like this big animal, and you just have to break it up and kind of deconstruct the whole series of issues, or the whole of it, and then you can address it. And so a lot of times I'll just start and say, all right, well, what about today? What's your biggest issue, your biggest challenge? What's your biggest pain today? And it could be as simple as, I have a coworker that is just driving me crazy, not delivering what they say they are, or my company has let me down because I've made promises that they can't, seem to stand by, or, on and on. But a lot of times a big issue, a big series of issues, can certainly be addressed much better if you break them down into smaller parts. And a lot of times just focusing on what the problem is today is a really great place to start. And then we get into other, longer term issues as you're working through today's problem. And then it opens up the path, and for the dialogue and the consideration of other events, other things that are all contributing to the pain of the day, and that really just helps like I said, continue that dialogue so that we can really get into the flow of kind of the coaching the coaching flow. And these are observations that I've had as a relatively new coach. And I've coached and mentored people, for half my life, but not in I'm being very purposeful about this right now. And I'm really trying to capture the essence of how to convey this, how to relate very well to people. And so I'm trying to formalize the process a little bit. And so these are observations based upon that. A lot of times too, I found it could be as simple, maybe it's not today's pain, but they can be stuck. And we've all gotten stuck before, whether it's on a problem, trying to solve a problem, or, with issues or with personnel. It's easy. Everybody can become stuck. And one of the things that I've been able to be successful in terms of my work as kind of an outside or independent entity is that I can see things without a lot of baggage, without a lot of history. Come in as that third party, and a lot of times it helps me not to have a lot of context as to the history of things, and you just observe what's happening right now, and that gives me a clear picture of let's move here, let's do this, let's take that. When those that are entrenched in it, day after day for years, a lot of times just can't see it because they're too involved in too deep into the weeds of what's going on. And so, a lot of times identifying that pain or that problem is about being stuck. And so, we can talk through. So we've got the introduction, we've got that through us, we've identified a pain, or at least a place to start to address some of that. And then there's, kind of some assessment, but then we move on to number 3, and that's, making recommendations. And that's where, I'm finding as a coach, I never want to tell anybody, I don't want to tell people what to do. Well, I'd love to tell people what to do, but that's not how it works. Because it's not supposed to be me dictating or mandating, my opinion on what someone should do, the course of action. But it's more of a guide, guiding, coming alongside and saying, listen, here are things that I've learned in my, in my experiences. Don't do any of that. But no, it's more of a supportive and encouraging role, based upon, experience and skills and things like that we've learned. And so with that, I'll make recommendations that, hey, if I were you, it's like my uncle used to always say. He'd see me doing something and he'd say, well, if I were you, I would do it this way, which really meant, hey, dummy, do it the way I want you to do it. So but that's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about here with coaching. What I'm saying is that I'll make recommendations based upon my observations and the context, of the conversation thus far. And I will make recommendations saying, have you considered this, or this? And then that always kind of peels down into another level of questions, that happens frequently where, I've had one individual who has a business he's working for that's been a lot of attrition, kind of sales are down, things are changing at the executive level. And I think, there's probably going to be a buyout or something along those lines. And so as a result, he kind of wants to know where he's at for his work and for his future. And so I asked him, salary is salary and benefits, certainly need to know what that looks like. But I asked him, if you took that away, what else is keeping you there? What else would you, say that you would want to stay with this company through this transition? If compensation were kind of off the table. And I don't mean that you're independently wealthy and you don't need any money. It's just, what would it look like if that didn't factor into your decision right now? And that was just kind of a byproduct of, talking to him about going into this meeting about his next steps as the company changed, and really determining what he wanted out of that meeting before he even showed up, and kind of preparing for that. And as a result of preparing for that, obviously compensation came up, first and foremost. I mean, it's going to, he's got to feed the family, that kind of thing. But as a result of thinking through that preparation of what do I want when I walk into that meeting to talk about the next steps of my career or my life with this company, then it, threw the door wide open for him. Why else am I here? If it's just, compensation, yes, that's one thing for sure. And that's very important. But what does it look like for me? Am I going to get 2 months into this with maybe a little bit better comp and a couple more days vacation? And I'm going to think, oh man, there's nothing else motivating here, me here. And so that's why I asked the question. And his response was, well, first he had to think about it a little bit. And he thought, you know what, I like the challenge because there's going to be some changes, some significant changes. And having some history with this company already, maybe 5 or 6 years, he's got some history and he knows kind of how things have worked. He's going to see the change. And I think he'll be able to help be an instrument or a catalyst for some positive change, some positive implementation of maybe some of the new, operational goals and things like that with the new administration that's coming in or buying out this company. And so, but we wouldn't have gotten there had we not started talking about preparing for the meeting. And so that's kind of the nature of some of the recommendations that I would make or questions that I would pose, in a coaching type of a scenario. The other thing along those recommendations is that, we always want to set some kind of goals or objectives, through the process. I mean, that's important. I mean, we else have a coach to help you. You got to work through things, but there has to be an end to an issue. There has to be an objective to go, work towards. And so, so recommendations are made and, goals and objectives. You start to talk about some of that. And then number 4 is implementation. So we'll set our goal, we'll do our goal setting, or the objectives that we want to hit, or the things that we want to change, or improve upon, and put some hard time to that, some scheduled dates, milestone dates to that, because, what is it? If you just say you're going to try and you're not held to, any kind of a date to implement, then, there's always a negotiation on the back end, and you'll never do the thing. So implementation is very important though, because we can sit and daydream and talk and have fun, fluffy meetings all day long about all the great stuff that we could do or might change, or, that we might be able to benefit from or whatever. But until we really put a plan together to implement, to really put those ideas into action, we really don't have anything but a lot of fun talks. And so part of the implementation is prioritization. And so maybe we'll identify 2 or 3 things that need to change or improve, and we'll list them in, in priority, in listing of priority, and that will help us understand how to attack them and to put some timing to that. So, the highest priority may be your quick burn decision. I'm going to start coming to work early, I don't know. And you can implement it, and within 3 weeks, you hope to have a pattern established, positive pattern or something like that you're going to be, implementing or, working towards. And then you work down the list, down the steps, for the other priorities. And, we'll put dates to all that stuff too. And so implementation is really important though. So you can have the best laid plans and we can have the steps all laid out and we can have them prioritized. But you got to pull the trigger too. You've got to initiate as a part of the implementation phase, because if you're not going to initiate, you're not going to start it. Again, we've had some great conversations just based upon planning or putting steps together, or objectives or goals, but it really doesn't mean anything if we don't take that first step and move forward and get started. And sometimes this is the most difficult piece. I've seen this in my consulting and my owner's rep work a lot of times, that I will guide a client up to the edge of the cliff where they want to be to take a huge step. And we've done our homework, we've prepared, we've put our schedule, we've got our objective, clearly in laser focus. And there's just a hesitancy to step out there and, just make it happen. And it's a little frustrating, as you're walking with somebody, a client or whatnot, guiding them, through this, that they don't want to, jump into this, but it is a very personal decision, whether at the corporate level or on a personal level. It just is, and I can never make that decision for my clients, and certainly not for those that I'm coaching either. I certainly want to push them. I mean, my name's Goad. That's like some stick that you push cows with back in the old days or something like that. But I think so that's my nature. But if you can't implement, then you're not going to progress. You're not able to achieve these objectives or goals. Sometimes too, leadership can falter during times when you're trying to implement strategic goals and things that are a big change to an organization or to a team. It can lead right up to the point and then get cold feet or reconsider, or there's a ton of things that can happen to change at the last minute. I also have experience too where the leadership is very interested and very excited about the change or about moving to the next level or whatnot, but then the troops kind of rally and threaten to they just don't want to do it. And it's happened several times in my career that we've put programs or we've put all kinds of process together or whatever, and some of the employees will say, no, that's not how I do it. I'm not going to do it. And then that bounces right back to leadership. Well, hey, are you committed to implementing these changes or not? And it's about 50-50. Sometimes the leadership will say, hey, we're going for it, and if you don't like it, get off this bus. But just as many times, in my experience, has been the leaders that, I got to listen to my people. This might be too much. Maybe we're not going to do it. So I think I'm going to back off a little bit. And that's a little frustrating. But I've done my job to get them there. I can't guarantee results based upon somebody's decision that they don't want to make. So anyway, enough about implementation. You got to set some goals, and you have to pull the trigger to begin implementing them. And then the last piece, and this is, same for a lot of projects that I work with. So that's why it's kind of an easy, template for me, with the coaching, is because there's a lot of similarities with what I do in, with projects too. But the last piece of this, number 5, is accountability. And so you've implemented, you've started. Are we just going to go off into perpetuity and never hit our milestones? Yeah, that happens sometimes, particularly when there's no accountability. There's nothing on, next week, next month, next quarter to, ping on you to say how you're progressing, what's going on. And so in my coaching, right now we're doing a lot of weekly calls. And so it's pretty easy, once we start to implement stuff, that we can say, have that check-in, just that little subtle check in. How's it going? Are you feeling good about this? What are your challenges, or anything that, anything looks differently now that you've implemented and are starting to execute this? Is there anything that we missed in the planning and, with the recommendations? And so we kind of do some assessment there too, kind of need to tweak some things as we go. But for the most part, accountability is just checking in to see if you're hitting what you set in motion. And, it's pretty simple, but it's a huge piece. One of the things that I've found as an independent project manager is that when I come onto a project, I come on projects at a lot of different times during the life cycle of work. Everybody wants to get in early. I like to get in early so that I can help add a lot of value early. But sometimes an architect and a contractor, for instance, will already be selected and working together, and then a lender or somebody will suggest or require that I'm hired, or maybe the owner all of a sudden feels like things are starting to get beyond his control or his or her capabilities, and so as a result they need some help. And so it could be a variety of reasons why I get hired, but a lot of times I'll come into a situation where there's already a team working, and then I'm kind of the new guy. And it's interesting, because there's a laundry list of options for how it might, how that transition might be, all from really, really good to holy cow, I need to do something different for a living. But for the most part, it's good. But I get in there and it's really funny because sometimes just my presence, and I'm not, trying to, puff myself up, or it could be anybody, but just having somebody there present who knows a little bit about the project, what's going on, and understands the process can add a level of accountability that just keeps everybody a little sharper on their game. And I've witnessed this for over 20 years, doing that. Now, I don't rest upon that as far as the value that I bring. I view that as just an added benefit, and certainly work and strive to, help facilitate and to show other value, by my being there. But it is a real palpable thing. Just think of it as in terms of this. Sometimes I've worked as like as a construction manager before, on site, like on some site work projects that I've had. It's just a smaller, there's kind of smaller overhead, smaller, the contractor's usually a dirt and pipe contractor. So there's not the levels of management and people and moving parts. You have, a couple of engineers and a site contractor. And so I'll go manage that work on behalf of the owner sometimes. And those are the ones that I really see, because if the guys in the field, a lot of times, if they know, somebody from the owner is there that knows kind of what's going on, that just adds, it just makes sure, it reassures or assures that everybody's kind of just up on their game. And that's a really good thing because, the owner wants it. Like I said, I never leverage that as my only value point, but it is something that is definitely seen. I think it's good. Overall, everybody gives me really positive feedback. Even the contractors, they're happy that, that their guys are on their best, stepping out on their best foot, when there's that accountability there. And, the city, the municipalities all tend to like it as well. And so there's really something to accountability. And it doesn't mean you have to be a jerk and yelling and, throwing the book at people and all of that. That's not real accountability. And that strays really far from the intent of coaching. True accountability is just, I think, having a presence. And for me, it's, and with regard to the ones that I'm coaching, it's because I really care about them. I care about their development. I care about their problems, to help find solutions, to help them navigate through, questions and things like that. So the accountability for me is kind of the really fun part because they're doing all the work. Those that I'm coaching, they're doing the work in terms of their own, challenges and their own hurdles and all of that. And I'm just kind of walking along, with them and, hey, have you thought about this? Hey, can you, are you good there? And it's kind of a sweet spot, and I really like it a lot. And so, if you're thinking about trying it, I would encourage you to just do it. What I did, and this may be just something that nobody does. I don't know, but I just called a few guys that I knew, some younger guys, kind of not even in my industry, just guys that I knew were kind of at the at a crossroads with some decisions on their career to start a business or whatever. And I just reached out to them and said, hey, could I provide some coaching for you? Would you commit to a weekly call for 8 or 9 weeks, to where we spend an hour a week? And had 100% success with everybody said yes. And I have learned an incredible amount. But what's really funny is that these guys are we'll be talking about something and they'll say, I'm really stuck on this one thing. And I'll say, oh, I have a spreadsheet for that. Check this out. Or have you thought of this checklist? Or, this one time I had a thought, I had a thought about this project I was on, and I share these things, and it just kind of seems very, off the cuff for me. Not that I'm a super whiz or anything, but it's just, I've got a lot of experience and a lot of stories and a lot of stuff. And, I'll whip one of these little checklists out or something like that. And there's like this aha moment on the other end that, man, this is amazing. I can't believe how helpful this is. And so for me, that's really exciting because, I can share some of what I've developed or what I've learned or, knowledge that I have to somebody that can implement it and, and move forward. And quite honestly, it's super fulfilling for me just to do that, to know that I can have a positive impact in somebody else's career, somebody else's life. Because it's, we talk a lot about the career or the business or whatever, but quite honestly, it helps them, in fulfilling some objectives and goals and things for their life as well. And so it's just, for me, it's a great time. And I really encourage you, if you're even considering taking on, some coaching clients, or if you just want to come alongside a few people and do some mentoring and even just coaching, I really encourage you to explore that, because it's been a really great venture for me, and I plan to pursue it wholeheartedly as we go here. So just to sum up and just to wrap up, my 5 points. So number one, there's an introductory and fact-finding, like development, phase where you're going to get to know the person that you're coaching a little bit better. Even if you know them, professionally or personally, whatever, you've known them for years, still spend the time to get to know a little bit more. Because one of these guys I knew for a long time, in my whole life, but I didn't know a lot of specific things about his family or about his, specific work situation. And so we spent several weeks, an hour at a time, just kind of talking through the whole scenario. And it gave me a lot of great context into his issues and his pains, his problems, the hurdles, that kind of thing. And it was enjoyable just to get to know him a little bit better. It was not time wasted whatsoever. It was a very, very good, initial first step. So intro, fact-finding / development, that's a very important phase. Take the time that you need to develop that phase with your client. Okay. Number two, identify their pain or their problem, their hurdles. Are they stuck? Spend the time to flesh some of that out. If it's just this huge problem, work over a series of calls or meetings to start to deconstruct that and pull it out. You will find one or two huge components within that big mess that's driving a lot of it. So spend the time to kind of ferret that out in that second phase. Number three is making your recommendations. And you're going to tweak them and review them and kind of going through a couple of cycles so that you can kind of get to a place where everybody's comfortable in moving forward to the fourth level, which is implementation, and making certain that those goals and objectives are well defined, they're prioritized, and you got to pull the trigger in implementation. You got to get going and start. That's so important. And then ultimately, after you've done all that work together, no matter how long it takes or how condensed of a time, maybe somebody just knows all the stuff and knows where the pains are and has the things prioritized, just needs some encouragement to get off the dime. Who knows? But if it's a short period of time for those first four steps, or if it's a long period of time, be committed to that person or people that you're coaching to help spend the time that you need to. And then you get to ride through and walk with them in the accountability phase. And that's when you really start to see a lot of that come together, more of those aha moments that, wow, I'm really, the energy really comes, because then they're seeing the, they're reaping the rewards from the hard work. And the challenge, a lot of people, just even to consider coaching might be a huge decision, might be a pride thing or something like that. But if they can, see that all of that hard work and that decision to receive coaching has been beneficial and it is improving their work life and their family life, maybe that just makes it all the more gratifying for you as well, because I know it does me. And so that's all I have to say. I just am really excited about coaching, and again, I'm new to this, quite honestly. I've been doing a lot of it professionally, but not under the flying the flag of coach. It was, through other professional avenues, but really there's a lot of similarities with what I've done for a living for a long time. And so I'm just really excited to share that, what I've observed, and who knows, maybe I'll have some additional thoughts as I continue to grow and to learn as I work with people. But I really was excited, and I just wanted to share some of that with you today. So I hope that you have heard something here that can help you. I hope that you've heard something that'll inspire you and just make you better at what you do. And so with that, I'm going to say thank you a bunch for joining me, and I will look forward to next time being able to talk with you. All right, take care.